Deep in the heart of every American, there burns a flame. It's an inheritance from every generation of Americans that has come before us. It's what makes this nation so special, why we stand apart. That's why we have overcome every crisis we have ever faced before.
Chicken. I did roast a whole chicken. Thank you.
The pandemic of 1918, the Great Depression, two world wars.
Acid,
we overcame them all.
That heat where you marinate the chicken in a buttermilk like overnight, and then you roast it. And it was
this nation has never ever been defeated. We've been together, and we're not going to be defeated now.
So thank you.
As Americans, we may be physically apart, but we are truly all in this together, and you know it.
It takes a long time, but it's surprisingly easy.
Our military,
and it was
our first responders, our doctors. Deep in the heart of every American, there burns a flame. It's an inheritance from every generation of Americans that has come before us. It's what makes this nation so special, why we stand apart. That's why we have overcome every crisis we have ever faced before. The pandemic of 1918, the Great Depression, two world wars. We overcame them all, and out of each crisis, we emerged stronger. This nation has never ever been defeated when we've been together, and we're not going to be defeated now. As Americans, we may be physically apart, but we are truly all in this together, and you know it. Our military, our first responders, our doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, those who we don't talk about much, the grocery store worker, stocking the shelf, the mail and package carriers. You know, in crisis, characters revealed. And each day we're seeing the courage and the heart of Americans shine through. That flame is not going to be extinguished in this moment. Because here's the simple truth. This is the United States of America. There's not a single thing we cannot do if we do it together.
Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm Megan Hatcher-Mays. I'm the Director of Democracy Policy at Indivisible, and thank you so much for joining us today. You may know me from my ongoing attempts to save our democracy, and you may remember me from my show, Impeachment Daily, which we filmed every day during the Trump impeachment saga. Impeachment Daily, you might remember it. Sadly, it was not renewed for a second season, but the day is still young, so we'll see what happens. These days, our democracy work, as you can imagine, is heavily focused on elections and voting safely in November, even though this very crazy and very upsetting global pandemic is going on. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that today. It's a very scary time, but we are all in this together, and that gives me a lot of and joy. So welcome to the May National Activist Call. Thank you for joining us on Zoom, on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're joining us. Thank you so much. Feel free to take a moment and share this live stream link with your friends and family if they want to join up. We would love to talk to them this evening. These calls are a place for us to get together, talk about our successes. Therefore, Indivisible who maybe have not quite yet joined an Indivisible group, welcome to our call. This is an opportunity for us to build community, most importantly. So please go ahead and share this link, like I said, with your friends and family. We've had a very robust chat here on Zoom. People are sharing their favorite quarantine snack. They're sharing recipes with me, thank goodness, because I'm running out of ideas. So thank you so much. So this month is an extra special super duper live stream version of the call, since we will be talking about our endorsement of Joe Biden, who is officially the Democratic nominee for president of the United States. And we have our co-executive directors on, Leah and Ezra. So very excited to hear from them. Before I begin, I want to take a quick moment to do a rundown of everyone's favorite topic, puppies. No, logistics, actually. We have some folks joining on Zoom and others joining through the live stream. Either way, everyone is automatically muted because we have so many people on. Last check, over 100. It could be more now. I'm not totally following it on my phone, but thank you so much for joining. One of our favorite parts of these calls is the connections that are made in the chat. So if you're joining on Zoom, feel free to just shout out where you're joining us from. Again, I need more recipes, cookies, dip. Great, keep it coming. If you're joining through the live stream on Facebook, or just you can leave a comment on Facebook, and Twitter the same. You can just respond to the tweet, and feel free to drop any questions that you might have wherever you are watching from, because we are going to do a Q&A at the end of this call and trying to take some questions throughout the call itself. So feel free to drop those in the chat box on Zoom, leave a comment on Facebook or Twitter, and we will get to those to the best of our ability. So thank you so much. If you're struggling with any issues, I think my friend Sarah Marino is going to drop a link to Zoom support. If you have any issues seeing or hearing me, you can click on that link and figure it out. So now that we've done all the important logistics, everyone's absolutely favorite topic of all time, I'm going to run us through the agenda of tonight's call. We're going to be starting off with a very exciting update from Indivisible co-executive directors Leah and Ezra about our endorsement of Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. Then Indivisible National Policy Director Angel Padilla is going to provide us an update on the fourth coronavirus relief package, which is pending in Congress right now. We thought maybe they would drop it tomorrow, but now we're not so sure. But Angel has all the hot gossip about that bill, so he's going to talk about that later in the call. And how you can make a big impact on the outcome of that bill, like what's going to be in the bill. A lot of people in the chat talking about the Postal Service. I see that. A lot of people talking about funding for the election. So this is the perfect moment to take action and make an impact on what ends up in this bill. So Angel's going to talk about that. And last but certainly not least at all, we are going to hear from our Indivisible senior organizer, Danessa Atiles, who is in some sort of lovely California backyard, making us all very, very jealous. One of my favorite people of all time. She's going to be talking about organizing during coronavirus when we have to maintain a lot of social distancing and be apart from each other. We can still organize. We can still find a way to be together. So at the end of the call, like I said, we're going to do some questions and answers. So feel free to drop those in the chat box or in the comments wherever you're watching. And with that, I turn it over to our fearless leaders, Leah and Ezra.
Hey everybody,
Hey,
great to be here tonight. Really just feel really lucky to be joining everybody in this moment. It's great to have a chance to talk to everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear us okay. Any a thumbs up? I got a thumbs up, so we're good. Leah is gonna kick us off, and thank you to everybody who had congratulations. For folks who didn't see, we sent this out in the newsletter. Leah is pregnant and is due later this year with a new baby boy that is joining us. And for those who don't know, also Leah and I are married, and we are not flagrantly violating social distancing or quarantine rules right now. That is why we are calling you from our living room, where we helped write the Indivisible guide 3.5 years ago. So it's incredible to be joining you from the same place now. That's not the main subject of the conversation, though. Right now, we are instead going to talk about Indivisible National's endorsement of Biden. Leah, do you want to take it away?
Yes, absolutely. Let me start with a little bit of ancient history. Back in 2019, as everyone knows, we started the primary season with the Indivisible Pledge. We asked candidates, all Democratic candidates and grassroots activists, to commit 1, to a constructive primary, 2, to rallying behind the nominee, and 3, to doing the work to beat Trump. We're thrilled to see huge pickup. Almost every major Democratic presidential candidate signed the Indivisible Pledge, as did tens of thousands of grassroots activists. The only 2 who did not ultimately sign were Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. We were thrilled because this is really core to the Indivisible spirit. At the end of the day, no matter our disagreements, we know we are in a fight for the future of our country. We know Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy. We know we're going to have to be 100% unified to beat him. It has been a really long primary. And as y'all know, Joe Biden was not the top scoring candidate on the Indivisible scorecard or the top polling candidate when we polled the movement, but the primary is over and he's the nominee. And that means that it's time to fulfill the promise of the Indivisible Pledge and rally around him to beat Donald Trump. Now, I know folks on this call might still be feeling all kinds of things about the primary, disappointment, frustration, anger. Possibly you're just relieved that it's over. Wherever you are coming from, wherever you're feeling, we know that you're on this call tonight, you're with us tonight because you believe, as we do, that Donald Trump and his enablers are an existential threat to this country. You believe in bold progressive change on democracy, on immigration, on climate change. You know it's not possible in a second Trump administration. You know we can organize to win these things, and the first step to doing that is organizing to elect Joe Biden. That's why we sent out to the movement 2 weeks ago a recommendation to fulfill the Indivisible Pledge and move forward with endorsing Joe Biden for president. And with votes in from all 50 states, Puerto Rico, and DC, over 95% of our movement voted to move forward with an endorsement. So what does that mean? That means the general election is starting. That means that we are all in to support the Democratic nominee. Now, this does not mean that we are going to always agree with everything that Joe Biden says or does. We are here to build progressive power. That can mean pushing our friends as well as Republicans. We've done it before, we'll do it again. And we believe that bold progressive change is possible in 2021 if we elect Joe Biden, hold the House, flip the Senate. The limits of what's possible are what we are able to organize to demand. And fundamentally, we all see the threat on the horizon here. No one wants to wake up on November 4th with Donald Trump reelected and wonder if there was something more they could have done. American democracy cannot survive another 4 years of Donald Trump. And what we know from Indivisible groups is that wherever you were in the primary, you are all in to beat Trump and fight for what comes next. So we're really proud to take this step with you.
Thank you so much, Leah and Ezra. Am I still talking?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, I got muted because I should not be thanking you. No, just kidding. No, thank you so much for that update. I think everyone agrees, as Ezra says, compared to compared to Donald Trump, Joe Biden is Abraham Lincoln, both Roosevelts, all the other presidents wrapped up into one. So there's a big fight ahead of us this year, for sure. So thank you so much. They're going to hang around. If people have questions, keep putting those in the chat box. We're going to do the Q&A at the end. Again, if you're just joining us, welcome to the National Activist Call. We do these every month. Please tell us where you're tuning in from the chat, and please continue to share your recipes. I thank you so much for that ongoing assistance. And I've just discovered if you text the word live stream to 97779, you will be notified about these calls and all other live streams going forward. So I myself am going to do that as soon as I log off of this call. So thank you so much. So thank you for joining us. We just heard from Leah and Ezra about our very exciting endorsement of Joe Biden. If you haven't seen the launch video that we did for that, please check that out on Twitter. It turned out really, really well. It's very wonderfully done. Very exciting. We've got a lot of work to do. But in the meantime, there's a lot going on in Congress. The House and the Senate are currently negotiating the 4th coronavirus relief package, and we're doing our best to make sure that is the best possible version of the bill that we can get. So Angel Padilla, our National Policy Director, is here to talk to us a little bit about it and how you can all make an impact on the outcomes of that bill. Take it away, Angel.
Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here. And as Megan said, this is a really exciting and important moment here for how we respond to COVID. As everyone knows, families, communities continue to suffer around the country. This has been going on for a couple months, and it won't, it's not going to end. Who knows for how long? And so it's really important for Congress to actually respond to the needs of the moment. So as Megan said at the top, this is we've been hearing a lot of information from the Hill about what's happening. I think the things to keep in mind is that this is what members of Congress and the press are calling COVID-4, but it's actually the 5th major bill that Congress has passed. There were 3 initial bills, and then very recently, a few weeks ago, there was like an extension, a smaller bill, but these are still massive bills. The CARES Act that was passed in March, for example, was over $2 trillion. That's how massive that bill was. And as a reminder, we're in a split Congress where, at the beginning of this year, no one expected that there would be, that we'd have Congress producing these kinds of bills. But, because of COVID and the crisis that we're in, Congress has been responding. I think it might be useful to just kind of quickly talk about the trajectory that we're probably going to see. Right now, the House, controlled by Democrats, is working on its proposal for the next round of COVID response. That is not final yet. They are still working. The last we heard was that they were going to be working through the weekend in order to finalize that bill. We had heard that it might get introduced tomorrow, but more likely it'll be the weekend. So the first round of this is going to be the House, the Democratic proposal. That will be followed by rounds of negotiations between the House Democrats, Speaker Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, the Senate controlled by Republicans, and then Mnuchin, Trump, the White House. And it'll be negotiations between those three bodies in order to get to a final deal. Now, the bill that the House is working on now, again, is not finalized. Committees in the House were asked to draft bills or their sections, and Pelosi is going to have final say on what goes into that bill. The thing to keep in mind is that because it's not final, there's still an opportunity to influence what's in it. Now, this is probably not going to become law, right? I mean, just being realistic, the House bill is not going to become law. It'll be followed by another round of negotiations. But the reason why it's so important, the reason why this House bill is so important is because it really is going to set the tone and the parameters for the negotiations that will come immediately afterwards. That's why it's so important to have, a strong, bold, Democratic proposal at the outset, because then that gives us more of an opportunity to keep some of those things in that final bill. Now, as folks may have known, have seen, we and our partners are asking for this to be bold, and we want it to be as inclusive as possible. There are things we don't know how many more opportunities we're going to get to respond to this. Mitch McConnell has already said that he doesn't want to pass any more of these bills. And so each time we pass one of these, we need to make sure that we are maximizing what we get, that Democrats are using the levers that they have, for example, the control of the House, to make sure that we get things that we need. So what are some of those things that we need? By the way, you can go to the peoplesagendapledge.org to find out more information about this. But we are really specific about what we need. We, for example, need to make sure that we are actually keeping people paid on payrolls. We need to make sure that people and families have enough economic supports to get through this crisis. We need to make sure that there is, for example, an extension to unemployment insurance, which is going to expire at the end of July. We need to make sure that we are actually we are providing money and support for elections, because as we saw in Wisconsin just a few weeks ago, Republicans don't like democracy. They're going to try to make sure that people cannot vote. And so if Congress doesn't do something to protect people's right to vote, then it is going to put us in a worse position this fall. So those are, there's a long list of things that are on our website. I'm not going to go over all of them because it's a really long list. But those are some of the key things. One other thing I just want to uplift is, it's interesting that Donald Trump himself, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. We're not fans of Donald Trump, but he himself has been saying and has said in public that the virus doesn't discriminate, right? That it does not discriminate. And yet Congress, as it responds to this, is leaving immigrants entirely out of it, entirely out of testing and treatment for COVID, and then also completely out of the economic supports that are being passed. So one of the things that we're asking members of Congress to do is to make sure that any response that they produce is inclusive of everyone, because it's simple. I mean, you're only as healthy as your neighbor. And so that's why we need to make sure that we are being inclusive in our response. Now, what can you actually do? Again, this is the House is finalizing this bill, which means you have a member of Congress that you can call to express your support for some of these proposals. If you go to, again, the peoplesagendapledge.org, you will see some of the asks that we're making. And they, again, cover all those big buckets that I just covered. The last thing I'll say on this, it's a really important point here, is that because, as I said, we don't know how many more opportunities we're going to get here. We cannot settle in our response. We need to make sure that it is that it is a bold package, which is why what we're asking members of Congress to do is to commit, to take a pledge that they are not going to support the bill unless it actually meets their priorities, unless it actually does what it needs to do for families and workers and communities. So the ask is simple: call Congress, ask them not to vote for a bill unless it actually meets those priorities. Unless it actually provides support for families, unless it actually, funds USPS. I saw someone post that they want USPS funding. It has to actually be bold and progressive and inclusive. And again, a member of the most important thing a member of Congress has is their vote. That's the most powerful thing here in Washington, a congressional vote. And so if they are not putting their vote behind, their priorities, then their priorities aren't, what do they matter, right? This is the best way of them to support and express their support for something. So again, if you go to people's agendapledge.org, it has the asks, the priorities, and also it has daily call scripts on all of these issues. So again, I think I'll hang around and see if people have questions, but it's an important time. And so if you have an opportunity, please call your members of Congress.
Thanks, Angel. That was really, really helpful, very inspiring. One thing I wanted to add, since I also am on the policy team and I'm the host of this event, one of the things we're asking for is lots and lots of money to pay for all the stuff that needs to happen. So we're trying to build some infrastructure for expanded vote by mail, and to do that, we need more money for the post office and all this stuff. A lot of Democrats are still living in this time frame, the sort of Reagan era, where it's woo, how are we going to pay for it? And they balk at the cost of things. So one thing I think we can actually do is assure them that it's okay, just pay for it. We're not going to get mad at you if you set aside $4 billion for elections, or if you set aside X billion dollars for the post office. We're not upset about that. It's not the 1980s, it's 2020, and things cost stuff. So I think that's one way that you can help a lot, is by reaching out to your member of Congress and saying, don't balk at the cost. It costs what it costs, and we need to fix it. We need to really build up this infrastructure so that our democracy can operate the way it's supposed to in November. So that's one thing that we saw kind of bubbling up today, that a lot of Democrats were getting worried about the cost, which is not something that you should worry about. The other thing I wanted to add, just on a personal note, is that this COVID-19 stuff is super scary. I'm sure there's lots of people on this call who have been kind of personally impacted by the coronavirus. I am one of those people. I have loved ones who have been very seriously ill because of this virus. And I've been seeing lots of photos of people taking it seriously and going around and just hanging out in public and not doing social distancing. And I think a part of that comes from oh, I'm echoing myself, but the Congress is not taking really strong steps to really demonstrate how serious this is. Trump is not demonstrating how serious this is. So there's a lot of burden on us to take some responsibility and do what Congress and Trump will not do, and that is social distance, stay at home to the best of your ability. Don't get sick, don't get other people sick. You really don't know how this virus is going to affect you, even if you don't have underlying health conditions. So just stay safe. It's easier to just stay at home. I can provide any TV recommendations if you need something to watch. All I do is watch TV, so you can just email me anytime. So with that out of the way, I'm very excited to turn it over to Danessa Atiles, who has the best background of anyone on the call. She's going to talk about, yes, wear a mask. Danessa is going to talk about organizing in the age of social distancing. It is possible to do, and Danessa, take it away.
Wow, I'm just so humbled to be with so many amazing activists across the country tonight. Like Megan said, my name's Danessa Atiles, and I came to Indivisible in January of 2017 when my member of Congress had his first post-election town hall. There were so many people there that the lines were out the door. And as I was standing in line, I met a soon-to-be really close friend as she was handing out paper and markers and encouraging people to make signs. And I asked, what are the signs supposed to be for? And she was like, well, I read this guide, and they said that we should have visuals. Soon after that, we formed our own Indivisible group, and flash forward 2 years later, I joined the Indivisible staff last fall as the senior regional organizer for California, Alaska, and Hawaii. We've been so excited to see the creativity and really the breadth of organizing in this moment. So many groups are using this time to support their communities, to connect with their electeds, and really dig in deep on policy and electoral work. We also recognize that this is the most difficult moment we've ever had to face. So many have lost loved ones. So many people are without jobs. So many people are unhoused, food insecure, housing insecure, and at risk right now. And for anyone who needs to hear it, I just want to say it's okay if you're not able to engage right now. Take care of yourself, take care of your family. And those of us who have the privilege to be able to engage right now, we're going to keep up the momentum and we'll be here when you're able to jump back in. And speaking of jumping in, we have built a page on our website for community building during the coronavirus.
Hey,
It has
hey, Danessa.
resources. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. There's some folks in the chat box are saying they can't hear you very well. Any chance you could maybe yell
I can
a little
hold.
bit?
I
Yes.
can hold the mic
That would
right
be great.
here.
Yes.
Sure.
Let's see if that chat box let us know if that's better.
All right.
Yeah, they say that's good. Yeah, do that.
Okay. We've built a page on our website for community building during coronavirus. It has some resources on how to host virtual events, setting up texting trees to check in on one another and develop deeper relationships, how to start texting for our payback projects and endorsed candidates, and ideas about mutual aid and connecting with legislators. I've loved seeing how groups have really pivoted their in-person actions to virtual events. You guys are Zooming everywhere. Like Indivisible Stanislaus, who just last night had their Congress member Josh Harder on their Zoom meeting. They're really using this moment to build deeper relationships with electeds and push them on our progressive values. It's such a great way to build capacity within your group. And we have Zoom tips and tricks on our website just for that. Groups are also using Zoom to do electoral work because we know that we need to hold on to the House and take back the Senate. So you're hosting phone banks and letter writing parties like Indivisible YOLO, who hosts weekly postcarding and letter writing parties and have written over 10,000 postcards while sheltering in place. Our Indivisible Marin, who hosted 2 phone banks just this week using our hub dialer on our website, and they've reached hundreds of voters in Michigan. And just last week, Indivisible Beach Cities and Northridge led an amazing virtual protest on virus-free voting that dozens of Indivisibles and partners participated in, and they reached millions of people. This is proving that we can still do this really necessary policy work, even amidst a pandemic. You can also learn on our site more about mutual aid and building relationships within your community, like setting up texting trees or partnering with local organizations. Indivisible Colorado Action Network has a regional texting tree that's been really successful. Over the last 2 months, and that's been so necessary and impactful in this moment. Orchard City Indivisible has been focusing on fundraising for community groups that are providing direct services to vulnerable populations in their county and featuring these groups for fundraising and donation drives. So many people are doing this tremendous movement work, and I want you to know that you can too. If you go to indivisible.org and click Join the Movement, sign up for our emails to learn more about our upcoming calls and trainings. Our training team is producing amazing content for people to be able to engage with in this moment. Things like text banking, our payback project and elected officials, also organizing in red and rural communities. We have an advocacy amidst COVID training coming up, and also some racial biases trainings that will be really great to dig into for your groups when you're having to shelter in place or socially distance from people. Don't forget, we also have monthly calls like Ditching Mitch and a special call just for people of color. So again, click Join the Movement button at indivisible.org to get emails for upcoming calls, trainings, and more. And I just want to give a huge thanks to all of you for continuing to show up while we're physically distancing. I'm so proud and humbled to be in this movement beside each of you. And I will pass it back to our MC, Megan.
Thank you, Danessa. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all that. All the links, I understand from the chat box that some of the links you can't copy and paste them in the chat box. So Sarah Marino is going to send all of that stuff to everybody so that you can get the links to everything that Danessa said, everything that Angel talked about, and everything that Ezra and Leah talked about too. So we are going to take some questions, but first I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. This was really good conversation. The chat was very lively and wonderful. I got a lot of good recipe ideas, so I really honestly can't thank you enough. So here's some here's some action items from this call. Call your members of Congress. Like Angel talked about, the coronavirus relief package is going to be dropping maybe sometime over the next few days. So call your members of Congress and demand they sign on to the People's Agenda. You can find out ways to take action at peoplesagendapledge.org. Our next national activist call is going to be on June 4th, so make sure you get registered for that. And again, you can text the word live stream to 97779 and a robot will text you and let you know when our next live stream is going to be. Magical, truly. You can get involved with an Indivisible group in your area or find a virtual event at indivisible.org. So thank you again. We have a couple of questions. So the first one is actually for Leah and Ezra. It's a very good one. Can Indivisible weigh in on promoting Joe Biden's vice president pick? And how can Indivisible keep pushing Biden to the left?
Well,
good question.
Great question.
Do people have preferences when it comes to the vice presidential?
Do you want to shout out
pick?
in the chat box who you're hoping to be as vice president?
Yeah, let us know. And we'll be asking the movement more in a more
Yes.
structured method in the future, but it would be great to just hear what y'all are thinking. Oh, we got a lot of Warren, Stacey Abrams, Michelle Obama, Harris, Abrams, Warren, Stacey Abrams, Warren.
Yep.
We need Elizabeth Warren, Stacey Abrams. I'm getting a message that I think you all might like Stacey Abrams and Elizabeth Warren a little bit.
Well, and on that
oh,
note,
and Kamala Harris, Tammy Duckworth. There are a few options here. Yep.
We've already weighed in with a couple of efforts to the vice presidential or to the vice president's campaign about the vice president that he will pick. Both emphasizing how important it would be to consider women of color and emphasizing the importance of a progressive woman pick. So on both of those points, hearing from folks who are looking for progressive candidates, hearing from folks who are really excited about Stacey Abrams and Kamala Harris in the comments, have weighed in. We're going to be keeping that conversation going, and we're going to be having that conversation with the rest of the movement as well. On how we continue to push Joe Biden to the left, that is a great question. So the way that we are talking about this now is we have endorsed. That's because we know that we're all in for the general election. That's what it means in a primary. You fight it out on the ideas. In the general election, you fight it out with the Republicans. But that doesn't mean that it's the end of the ideological conversation either. And we're working with partner organizations to make sure that the Biden campaign understands that this is about building a winning coalition. And that means working with and learning from progressives across the board on issues like climate change, on issues like immigration. We've been pleased to see him move a little bit on some of these things so far, and we're hoping to see further movement over the coming months. We'll be supporting those efforts. Like we said, an endorsement doesn't mean that we're always going to agree, but what it means is that we're going to all push together when it comes to the general election.
Just to underline, it's no secret that Joe Biden was not the top candidate for most Indivisibles during the primary. I believe he had about 6% of support among the Indivisible movement in the February poll. His team knows that. We've told them that. And also, we all made a commitment to rally around and make whoever the nominee is president, and we are committed to that. But this is a two-way street. Look, the primary is over, and we've got our nominee, and we're going to rally around him to make sure he's president. But now that Biden is the nominee, he has the privilege and the burden of building a winning coalition. And that means actively building bridges to progressive groups, to the grassroots, so that people are excited to elect Joe Biden and not just itching to get Trump out of office. We need people excited to elect Joe Biden. And so what we are going to be looking to do over the course of the coming weeks and months is get people excited. And he can help with that. He can help with that by making sure that it's clear that he is committed to building those bridges too. What are the positions he's taking on democracy, on immigration, on climate, on healthcare? What commitments is he making to actually support the values that we are all fighting for and have been fighting for 3 years? So I think this is going to be a joint effort. This means us doing everything we can do and the campaign doing everything they can do in order to bring everybody on board. And we're committed to that.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to stick with you because there's another question about Joe Biden. Obviously, a lot of folks have been following this pretty closely. And the question is, what is Indivisible's stance on the Tara Reid allegations?
It's a great question. And we actually posted a thread on this on Twitter last week following Vice President Biden's appearance on Morning Joe. I'm happy to drop that in the chat box. But what I would say to everyone here is it's something that's weighing heavily on all of our hearts, and it's really hard. And if anyone had easy answers, you would have heard them by now. We've expressed directly to the Biden campaign that it's really important that they respond transparently and directly and in a way that does not attack or smear Tara Reid for coming forward with her story. And what I would say here and on this call is that it's really important that we as a movement do the same. Whenever we are talking within the movement, when we're in our Facebook groups, when we're part of the conversation around the presidential campaign, we just need to remember that we are in the company of survivors. We need to be respectful of the broader systemic context or broader context of systemic violence against and habitual smears against women who come forward. And we need to approach this with subject with both the compassion and the ultimate commitment to supporting women that it deserves.
Thank you. This is an ongoing conversation, I think, so please continue to reach out to us about it. So definitely something that we're all working through. So thank you very much for that question. The next question is for Angel. Why have the stimulus bill originate in the Senate? Angel, this is a procedural question, get excited. Why have the stimulus bill originate in the Senate when the Constitution says budget bills must originate in the House? This is from Eleanor, and let's see how you do.
Yeah, I'm thinking about my constitutional scholars class in. I'm just kidding. I have no idea. I've never. This is a good question. And actually, we've gotten this question before, and so I think I know the answer to this one. So that's right. And so this is part of what in the Constitution, the origination clause, which means that if Congress is going to raise money, it needs to do it through the House first and then to the Senate. And the reason why that's not what we're seeing now is that is strictly about tax raising bills, and this is not one of those. That the Congress can still pass bills that, as in the process of implementing what is in those bills, either raises money or spends money. They can still do that, do it all the time. If there's a bill to an national park, they do that. I take money and do that. It is not strictly a raising bill, a tax bill or an appropriations bill. So that's why these big, massive packages, $2 billion was CARES at the end of March. That's a lot of money that farmers spend and have to go further to the House. While I'm at, I'm also the House first. While I'm at it, we also saw a question in the chat about Paycheck Guarantee. That's Jayapal's bill. I just wanted to quickly put a plug for that one because that is actually one of the things that we really want to see out of the next bill. It is part of what we are hoping to see out of the House bill. The last we heard, I think 2 days ago, is that it was still possible to get it in that bill. So if you care about that bill, you should call your member and say, ask them to tell Pelosi that they want that bill and that provision in the bill.
Thanks, Angel. I think you cut out a little bit, but basically the answer to the question was they're not raising taxes to get the money, so it doesn't have to originate in the House. Although raising taxes on some people might be a nice idea for the future. I don't know, something to think about. That's it. I think those are all the questions. I hope they all got answered, but you know where to go if you have more questions that need to be answered. You can go to Indivisible/ask-organizer, and we will get those answers to you. That's it from us. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you to Ezra and Leah for that wonderful update on Joe Biden and on their very exciting baby news. Again, if you have a very funny progressive slogan that you would like to slap on a onesie and send to their baby, please feel free to do so. I'm very excited to see what you come up with. It's going to be very, very good. Thank you to Angel Padilla for an update on the COVID-4, as we're calling it. And thank you to Danessa Atiles out in sunny California for her update on organizing in the time of social distancing. It was wonderful. And again, I want to thank not everyone whose faces you can see, but everyone who set this up. That'd be Yash Mori, our digital person, Chandler, our video guru, and Sarah Marino, your trusty dusty neighborhood organizer who was handling all of the questions in the chat. So thank you to all of them as well. Sarah's going to send out all of the links and resources that you couldn't copy and paste from the chat. Sarah's going to send all that stuff out. Thank you. That's it. Bye. Thanks. See you in June.
Deep in the heart of every American, there burns a flame. It's an inheritance from every generation of Americans that has come before us. It's what makes this nation so special, why we stand apart. That's why we have overcome every crisis we have ever faced before. The pandemic of 1918, the Great Depression, 2 world wars, we overcame them all. And out of each crisis, we emerged stronger. This nation has never ever been defeated when we've been together, and we're not going to be defeated now. As Americans, we may be physically apart, but we are truly all in this together, and you know it. Our military, our first responders, our doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, those who we don't talk about much, the grocery store worker, stocking the shelf, the mail and package carriers. You know, in crisis, characters revealed. And each day we're seeing the courage and the heart of Americans shine through. That flame is not going to be extinguished in this moment. Because here's the simple truth. This is the United States of America. There's not a single thing we cannot do if we do it together. Deep in the heart of every American, there burns a flame. It's an inheritance from every generation of Americans that has come before us. It's what makes this nation so special, why we stand apart. That's why we have overcome every crisis we have ever faced before. The pandemic of 1918, the Great Depression, 2 world wars, we overcame them all. And out of each crisis, we emerged stronger. This nation has never ever been defeated when we've been together, and we're not going to be defeated now. As Americans, we may be physically apart, but we are truly all in this together, and you know it. Our military, our first responders, our doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, those who we don't talk about much, the grocery store worker, stocking the shelf, the mail and package carriers. You know, in crisis, characters revealed. And each day we're seeing the courage and the heart of Americans shine through. That flame is not going to be extinguished in this moment. Because here's the simple truth. This is the United States of America. There's not a single thing we cannot do if we do it together. Deep in the heart of every American, there burns a flame. It's an inheritance from every generation of Americans that has come before us. It's what makes this nation so special, why we stand apart. That's why we have overcome every crisis we have ever faced before. The pandemic of 1918, the Great Depression, 2 world wars, we overcame them all. And out of each crisis, we emerged stronger. This nation has never ever been defeated when we've been together, and we're not going to be defeated now. As Americans, we may be physically apart, but we are truly all in this together, and you know it. Our military, our first responders, our doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, those who we don't talk about much, the grocery store worker, stock